I was born in England and came to the United States when I was 15 years old. At 17, I went back to England to spend time with my family who owned a pub. One day in 1977, in the early evening, a friend of mine made an Ouija board from a mirror and drew letters on it with a marker and used lard to make it slippery. We then found an old shot glass, turned it upside down, and used it as a pointer. It took a while for us to get it started, but we asked some questions. At first it moved very slowly. Then, as time went on, the indicator started moving so fast we had to have somebody write down the letters so that we could keep up with it. It was giving us quite a great deal of information, and it seemed like there were different personalities communicating with us. Sometimes it spelled out words in modern English, and then a new entity would take over and start spelling out words in Old English. After a while, whoever was communicating with us would use the extra lard to make patterns and draw a face. Sometimes, when we asked a question that it didn't want to answer, the shot glass would tip over on its side and stay there until we changed the subject. It drew a face I thought at the time looked like the creature from the Black Lagoon. When I think about it today, it was more like that of a reptilian extraterrestrial with huge eyes, scaly skin, and a small mouth. My sister took some photos of it and they didn't come out, but strangely, every other photo she took did. We tried using the board again the next day and once again used the lard as a lubricant. A short time into the session, it drew a picture of a solar system that looked like ours, and they said that they were from another planet that was on the other side of the sun that we didn't know about. They told my sister and her husband that in Kent, England, there was a natural time window, and if they went there that weekend, the aliens would appear to them. In the days that followed, my sister's husband started acting very strange and finally had a nervous breakdown, so they never went. After that, my sister never wanted to talk about what happened, and she stopped using the board to get messages. My friend and I continued to use the Ouija for several weeks, but weird stuff started happening around the apartment every time we used it. We heard strange sounds that came from nowhere, and things fell off shelves and sometimes flew across the room. This started to take place every time we used the homemade Ouija. During one session, it got so violent that my friend got scared and said that she wanted to stop. I picked up a Bible that was next to me and placed it close to the board. When I did, the word "kill" spelled out. Then it said, "Get rid of Bible, kill." This went on for 10 minutes, and I finally said I wasn't going to put the Bible away. As I picked up the Bible, it flew out of my hands and smacked against the wall. The Bible hit the wall with such a force that we just sat there startled for several minutes without a sound and just stared at each other. It was clear that whatever we were communicating with meant business and didn't want the Bible around. Then, the glass that we used as a pointer emitted a bluish-white spark and shattered in my hands into 1,000 different pieces. Things started happening after that night. It was a 2-room apartment, and my roommate told me that I was stiff on the bed one night and bouncing up and down as if something was shaking me. We often would wake up in the middle of the night or walk into the house after being away and smelled a strong scent of burning sulfur of which we could not find the source. There was always a presence in the house that seemed evil. I told my friend not to leave me alone in the dark because whatever this thing was, it was after me and wanted to get me alone. Weird things continued to happen for a few days. Then one night in the early morning hours, my friend and I woke up at the same moment and saw a green circle of light moving across the room. When we saw it, a feeling of terror grew in both of us, and I felt that if the light moved to the center of the room, something was going to open up, and it was going to be very bad for both of us. I then got out of bed and turned on the lights and said, "I don't want to do this anymore. I will not use the board again and look into this stuff anymore. Leave me alone." After I said this, the green light vanished and that was it. Nothing happened for 6 months until I moved back to America. While in the United States, I experienced what could be called dimensional contacts. After using the Ouija board in England and having the problem with the evil spirits, the last communication I had with this entity ended with it saying it knew I was going to America and that it would follow me across the Atlantic. It said I couldn't get away from it and would feel its power. Well, it must have made good on its promise because really strange things happened to me once I arrived in the United States in 1977. I told some friends about everything that happened in England. They were interested and wanted to see a demonstration, so they talked me into going to an old cemetery in Washington, Connecticut, where I lived with my parents. We were all just teenagers at the time, looking for cheap thrills. But we bought a Ouija board just to see what would happen. We went at night, and as soon as we began using it, the pointer began moving and spinning around. Then we heard something that sounded like 4 or 5 voices screaming nearby. Then it stopped. We used the board again, and the noise came back, but this time it sounded like 60 people, all yelling something we could not understand, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It sounded like someone was having a wild party, but the noise was more like growls than people screaming. At times, the noises sounded more animal than human. It was very strange. After a while, the yelling stopped and we left. I guess that in total, we heard those strange sounds for a good 25 minutes. A few years later, in 1985, one morning at about 3 o'clock, I suddenly woke up feeling as if the room was no longer solid, like something was opening up somewhere. I heard a voice coming from the basement say,
"You want something?"
When I heard the voice, I knew a spirit was in the room with me. It was definitely an evil presence and gave me a horrendous feeling. I couldn't see anything, but I definitely heard noises in the walls and windows. My first thought was that some unearthly being was in the room with me. It felt as if something was trying to get into me by digging down my spine. It was horrible. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I left my room, went downstairs to the den, and turned on the television to try and calm myself down, but it didn't work. I sat in the chair and couldn't keep myself from rocking back and forth. I couldn't focus my eyes anywhere for more than a couple of seconds. I felt the thing trying to pull at me and yank my soul out of my body. There were times when I felt taken out of my body and had to force myself back in. It was like a tug of war. Something was trying to pull me out and I was trying to stay in. I knew if I could last until dawn, things would be all right and this would be over, at least for a while. I knocked on my parents' bedroom door and they saw I was upset. My mother agreed to stay up with me. When we discussed that night years later, my mom said she didn't know what was going on, but she strongly felt that if she hadn't gotten up and sat with me that night, I wouldn't be here today. Morning finally came and I was fine. The evil presence had disappeared. The next day, I called my friend John, who answered the phone sounding surprised. "Bruce, is that you?" I told him that yes, it was me, and asked him why he sounded so shocked. John said he heard me outside his house screaming at 4 in the morning. When he went outside to investigate, no one was there. He was sure something terrible had happened to me, but he was afraid to call my house. 2 weeks later, my cat formed a habit of coming into the bed with me. It didn't want to curl up or snuggle, it just stood there, staring at me. After a few minutes of watching me, it would screech, its hair would stand on end, and it would run away. Also around this time, my parents told me I was screaming in my sleep. They said I would yell, "No, no, no, no," like I was being attacked. This continued for a while, but I don't really remember anything happening except for a dream I had in which I was walking across a bridge. A being was walking from the other side, approaching me. We met in the middle and looked at each other. When we made eye contact, I suddenly went flying backwards, as if being repelled by a powerful magnetic force. When I was thrown backwards, I landed in my bed and woke up.